January 24th, 1961. It's 2 a.m. AB-52 Stratofortress streaks across the cold sky of North Carolina, its 8 engines carving through frozen darkness at 30,000 feet. Inside its belly, 2 Mark 39 hydrogen bombs, each 250 times more powerful than the weapon that obliterated Hiroshima. 4 megatons of apocalyptic force wrapped in metal casings, suspended by steel cables above a sleeping countryside. Below, the town of Goldsboro dreams in winter silence. Tobacco fields stretch beneath a moonless sky. Farmhouses dot the landscape like scattered seeds. Then, without warning, the plane breaks apart. Metal screams. Fuselage fragments tumble through frozen air. As the wreckage falls, so does one bomb's parachute, deploying automatically, drifting downward like a grotesque flower blooming in darkness. And in that descent, its arming sequence activates. Only one safety switch, a single flick of metal, a component no larger than a cigarette lighter, keeps the Eastern Seaboard from evaporating. Silence. A heartbeat. Then, the low hum of a Geiger counter begins to tick. The Cold War stage. The year 1961 exists in the shadow of annihilation. John F. Kennedy has been president for exactly 4 days. The Berlin Wall doesn't exist yet, but the ideological chasm it will represent already divides the world into 2 armed camps. The Soviet Union and the United States circle each other like wolves, each convinced the other will strike first. This is the logic of mutually assured destruction. We are safe because we are ready to die. Under Operation Chrome Dome, American B-52 bombers patrol the skies 24 hours a day, carrying live nuclear weapons. The reasoning is simple and terrifying. If Soviet missiles destroy U.S. air bases in a surprise attack, these airborne bombers will still be able to retaliate. Deterrence requires constant readiness. Readiness requires risk. Tonight, one of those risks is about to materialize over North Carolina. The crew. Inside the cockpit of B-52, G serial number 58-0187, Captain Walter Scott Tulloch adjusts his heading. He's been flying bombers for over a decade. Korea, then the endless peacetime patrols that somehow feel more exhausting than war. Beside him, Major Jack Revel Reynolds works through pre-refueling checklists with practiced efficiency. In the rear compartments, 5 other airmen monitor instruments, toggle switches, exchange quiet jokes to stay awake. Among them is Lieutenant Adam Maddox, the navigator, barely 30 years old. He has a wife and infant daughter waiting in Virginia. He's thinking about them when the trouble starts. They're human, tired. Routine has dulled their fear into something manageable. A job, not an apocalyptic mission. They don't think about the payload. You can't, not constantly, or you'd never sleep again. But the payload is there. 2 Mark 39 thermonuclear bombs, each weighing 7,600 pounds, hanging in the bomb bay like sleeping giants. The leak. The first sign is subtle. A fuel gauge needle trembles, then begins to drop faster than it should. "Right wing's bleeding fuel," Reynolds says, his voice level but alert. Tulloch frowns. They've been airborne for hours on a routine patrol from Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. Aerial refueling over the Atlantic went smoothly. But somewhere in the complex hydraulic systems and fuel lines threaded through the B-52's massive frame, something has failed. A valve, a seal, some component stressed by thousands of flight hours, by the relentless tempo of chrome dome operations that leave no time for thorough maintenance. In the pressure to keep bombers constantly airborne, routine inspections have been rushed. Minor issues logged, but not addressed. Now, 30,000 feet above North Carolina, that deferred maintenance is about to extract its price. Cascade. The fuel leak accelerates. 20,000 pounds gone. 30,000. The B-52 begins to list, its right wing growing lighter, aerodynamics shifting dangerously. Tulloch fights the controls. "We're going to Seymour Johnson," he announces. "Emergency descent." But the plane is betraying them. Fuel streaming from the right wing creates an explosive vapor cloud around the aircraft. In the frigid air, it crystallizes, coating control surfaces with ice. The rudder becomes sluggish. Aileron response degrades. Then the electrical systems start failing. Short circuits triggered by fuel vapors cascading through wire bundles like dominoes made of lightning. Warning lights blossom across the instrument panel like malignant flowers. Hydraulic pressure drops. The intercom crackles with static. "We're losing her," Reynolds says quietly. In the bomb bay, the weapons safety officer monitors his own panel with growing dread. Electrical shorts are triggering systems that should only activate during bombing runs. He watches, helpless, as the bomb bay doors begin to open on their own, a ghost command issued by failing circuits. The break. At 10,000 feet, the right wing fails completely. The massive aluminum structure tears away from the fuselage with a sound like the world ending. A metallic shriek that drowns out the engines, the wind, even thought itself. The B-52 begins to tumble, entering an uncontrolled spin that generates forces the human body wasn't designed to survive. "Bail out! Bail out!" Tulloch's voice cuts through the chaos. Some of the crew manages to eject. Lieutenant Maddox feels the explosive charge beneath his seat fire, feels himself launched into freezing darkness, the shock of separation from the dying plane so violent it fractures his spine. His parachute deploys automatically. He descends through the night, watching fragments of burning aircraft spin past him like falling stars. Major Reynolds never makes it out. Trapped in the disintegrating cockpit, he rides the tumbling wreckage down toward Earth. And the bombs, the two Mark 39 hydrogen bombs, fall free from the shattered bomb bay. The fall. Bomb number 1's parachute deploys as designed. Its 28-foot diameter canopy blossoms white against the black sky, slowing the weapon's descent to 16 feet per second. Inside the bomb, mechanical systems activate in sequence. Arming circuits energize, preparing the weapon for detonation. Bomb number 2 tumbles without a parachute. Its lanyard tears loose as the weapon falls, leaving the bomb to plummet toward Earth at terminal velocity, spinning end over end. Below, in the farmhouse of tobacco grower Don Sewell, the man wakes to a sound like thunder, but there's no storm, no lightning. Through his bedroom window, he sees fire raining from the sky. Burning debris lands in his fields, in the swamps, splashes into farm ponds. The largest pieces hit with impacts that register on seismographs 30 miles away. By 2:30 a.m., fragments of B-52 serial number 58 1-0187 are scattered across 12 square miles of North Carolina countryside. And somewhere in that debris field, 2 hydrogen bombs lie in darkness, their plutonium cores still intact, their circuits still armed. Reconstruction. In the days following the crash, Air Force investigators begin the painstaking work of reconstructing what happened. Not just the mechanical failure, but the sequence of events inside the bombs themselves. What they discover is both reassuring and terrifying. Each Mark 39 bomb contains 4 independent safety mechanisms, designed with redundancy in mind. For the weapon to detonate, all 4 safeties must fail or be deliberately disabled. It's a system engineered to prevent exactly this scenario: an accidental detonation triggered by a crash. But as investigators examine the wreckage, a pattern emerges. A sequence. A cascade. The bombs were never supposed to arm themselves during a crash, but the crash itself, the specific way the plane broke apart, the particular electrical failures that preceded it, created conditions the safety systems weren't designed to handle. The chain reaction. It begins with the fuel leak. Electrical shorts in the wing spread to the fuselage wiring. Ghost signals propagate through damaged circuits. The bomb bay doors receive an open command that never came from human hands. They open. The bomb's suspension cables, stressed by the violent tumbling of the aircraft, break. The weapons fall free. As bomb number 1 falls, its lanyard, a cable designed to pull a pin that arms the weapon during intentional release, pulls taut. The pin withdraws. Safety number 1. Defeated. The parachute deploys, triggering barometric sensors. The bomb's internal computer interprets this as a normal drop sequence. Safety number 2. Defeated. Inside the fallen weapon, clockwork timers begin counting. Explosive lenses surround the plutonium core, ready to compress it into criticality. The arming sequence advances through its checklist, like a mechanical mind following instructions, indifferent to context, to accident, to the fact that this is all a terrible mistake. Safety number 3 fails when impact sensors register the proper deceleration profile. The parachute is working exactly as designed, creating a descent that, to the bomb's internal logic, is indistinguishable from a real attack run. 3 of 4 safeties defeated. 1 man. 1 moment. The weapons safety officer, we don't know his name, it was never declassified, is following his checklist as the plane breaks apart. His training is to prevent unauthorized detonation. His hands move across switches and safeguards even as the aircraft tumbles, even as G-forces pin him to his seat. In the bomb bay, 1 mechanical pin jams. It's not heroism, it's not even intention. It's a coincidence, a confluence of metal fatigue and angular momentum and random chance. A pin that should have withdrawn, activating the 4th and final safety, doesn't. It jams. And that jam, that tiny mechanical failure within the larger catastrophic failure, is what saves millions of lives. The logic of arming. To understand how close the world came to detonation, you have to understand the weapon itself. A thermonuclear bomb is not a single explosive. It's a sequence, a precisely choreographed dance of fission and fusion that must occur in microsecond intervals. First, Conventional explosives compress a plutonium pit into supercriticality. That creates the primary explosion, a mere atomic blast, like the one that destroyed Nagasaki. But that's just the trigger. The radiation and heat from the primary explosion compress a secondary stage containing lithium deuteride, nuclear fuel. Under the immense pressure and temperature, hydrogen atoms fuse, releasing energy orders of magnitude greater than fission alone. 4 megatons, equivalent to 4 million tons of TNT. The fireball would be 3 miles wide. Everything within that radius would be vaporized, not burned, not destroyed, but converted into plasma, into elementary particles, into light. The thermal pulse would ignite fires 50 miles away. The electromagnetic pulse would disable electronics across the Eastern Seaboard. Radioactive fallout would drift north on the prevailing winds, contaminating Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. Depending on weather patterns, the death toll from radiation poisoning alone could reach the tens of millions. All of this was one switch away from reality. The global context. Here's what makes it worse. The Goldsboro Incident wasn't unique. On this same night, January 24, 1961, there are 12 other B-52 bombers airborne, each carrying nuclear weapons. This is the normal operational tempo of Chrome Dome. Across NATO, Soviet and Chinese airspace, dozens more nuclear-armed aircraft patrol in endless circles, their crews fighting fatigue, their mechanical systems accumulating stress fractures and deferred maintenance issues. The protocol that nearly destroyed North Carolina exists because we believed it made us safer. Constant readiness, instant retaliation capability, deterrence. But every hour these weapons spend aloft is an hour of risk accumulation. Every flight is a roll of dice with civilization in the balance, and we're rolling those dice dozens of times, every single day, year after year. The butterfly effect isn't just about the specific failures in B-52 serial number 58-0187. It's about the systemic fragility of the entire architecture of nuclear deterrence. A house of cards built on the assumption that nothing will ever go wrong. Goldsboro proves the assumption false. Dawn Search. As sunrise bleeds across the North Carolina horizon, the scale of the crash becomes visible. Debris scattered across 12 square miles. Fragments of aluminum skin glittering in tobacco fields. A section of tail stabilizer impaled in a stand of pine trees. Fuel-soaked earth still smoldering. And bodies. One ejection seat found with its occupant still strapped in. Major Reynolds, who never made it out. 5 crew members survived the bailout, including Lieutenant Maddox, despite his fractured spine. 3 did not. But the immediate priority isn't recovery of human remains. It's the weapons. By 7 a.m., military convoys are racing toward Goldsboro. Air Force weapons specialists, explosive ordnance disposal teams, radiological safety officers in white protective suits. They arrive with Geiger counters, blast shields, and a terrible knowledge. Somewhere in this debris field are 2 active thermonuclear weapons. Active. That's the word that echoes through command channels. Not safe. Not inert. Active. Discovery. Bomb number 2 is found first, partially embedded in a muddy field. Its parachute never deployed, and it hit the ground at over 700 miles per hour. The weapon is badly damaged, casing ruptured, internal components scattered. But the plutonium core appears intact. Radiological readings are normal. The weapon failed to arm. One down, one to go. The search for bomb number 1 takes longer. Its parachute worked perfectly, slowing its descent, allowing it to drift on the wind. Searchers fan out through swamps and farmland, following faint radiation traces. They find the parachute first, white nylon draped over trees like a giant shroud. The bomb itself is 100 yards away, partially submerged in waterlogged earth near the Big Daddy's Road area. Mud and swamp water surround it. The impact crater is relatively shallow, exactly what you'd expect from a parachuted descent. Geiger counters begin clicking rapidly as the team approaches. The weapon appears intact, which is worse than finding it destroyed, because intact means its internal systems might still be functional. Intact means armed. The recovery. Colonel Richardson, the senior weapons officer on scene, makes the approach himself. His hands are steady, but his voice over the radio betrays the tension. "I've got visual on the primary casing. Parachute lines are still attached. Nose cone is... Christ, it's pointed down. Weapon is vertical in the mud. Can you see the arming panel?" "Affirmative. I'm moving closer. Someone get me a status on wind direction. If this thing has a plutonium leak, I want to know which way the contamination spreads." The team works in silence. Every footstep is measured. Every tool placement deliberate. They're essentially performing surgery on a live bomb, except the patient weighs 4 tons and could destroy several states. Richardson reaches the weapon's side panel. His gloved hands wipe away mud, revealing indicator switches and status lights. He reads them twice, checks his manual, reads them again. Then his voice comes over the radio, quieter than before. Safety 1, disabled. Safety 2, disabled. Safety 3, disabled. Someone breathes out a curse on the radio channel. Safety 4. Richardson leans closer. The 4th switch is partially obscured by mud. He clears it carefully, terrified that even this gentle motion might jar something loose, might complete a circuit, might... Safety 4 is engaged. The low-voltage arming switch is in the off position. The silence on the radio is profound. "Confirm that, Colonel. Safety 4 is engaged?" Confirmed. The weapon was 1 switch away from detonation. If the 4th safety had failed, or if the impact had been different, or if... His voice trails off. There's no need to complete the sentence. Everyone on the channel understands the arithmetic of annihilation. The extraction. Getting the bomb out of the ground is delicate, exhausting work. They can't simply lift it. The weapon is too deeply embedded, too unstable. Instead, they dig carefully around it, creating a perimeter, shoring up the muddy walls of the excavation with timber supports. Hour after hour, soldiers work in shifts. The swamp water keeps seeping back in. Pumps run constantly. The weather turns cold, then colder. Mud freezes to equipment and hands. 3 days into the operation, they've excavated down to the weapon's tail assembly. But the nose cone, where the warhead itself resides, has sunk deeper than expected. It's lodged in waterlogged clay, 20 feet underground. Engineers make a calculation. To extract the nose cone safely would require excavating a pit 50 feet deep and 100 feet across in waterlogged terrain. The risk of the pit collapsing, of the weapon shifting, of groundwater causing an electrical short in still live circuits. It's too high. A decision is made at the highest levels of government. They'll extract what they can, the tail assembly, the secondary components, but the primary warhead, the plutonium core and its surrounding explosive lenses, will remain buried. The truth revealed. In the temporary command center, Richardson reviews the weapons analysis report before it's classified and shipped to Washington. The findings are clear and damning. Safety 1, arming line. Defeated during bomb separation. Safety 2, timer. Defeated by parachute deployment. Safety 3, impact sensors. Defeated by proper descent profile. Safety 4, low voltage arming switch. Engaged. Weapon did not detonate. The report includes one additional detail that will remain classified for 52 years. It is estimated that if the low voltage arming switch had activated, the weapon would have detonated with full yield upon ground impact. The damage radius would have included Goldsboro and extended to Raleigh. Casualties: estimated 50,000 to 100,000 immediate. Long-term radiation deaths incalculable. Richardson signs the report, seals it in an envelope marked Top Secret, and hands it to a courier. The White House receives it the next morning. President Kennedy reads it once, his face unreadable. Then he orders it locked away. The public will be told there was no danger. The bombs were never armed. Safety systems worked as designed. Nothing to worry about. It's a lie. But it's a lie in service of deterrence, of preventing panic, of maintaining the facade of control. Because if the American people knew how close they came, if they understood that their survival was a matter of one jammed switch, one random coincidence, one moment of mechanical failure that happened to fail in the right direction, they might demand the madness stop. And the Cold War logic cannot permit that. The official story. On January 25, 1961, the Air Force issues a terse press statement. A B-52 bomber experienced mechanical difficulties and was destroyed in an accident near Goldsboro, North Carolina. 3 crew members were killed. 2 Mark 39 thermonuclear weapons on board were recovered intact. At no time was there any danger of nuclear detonation. Safety systems functioned as designed. The statement is technically accurate. The weapons did not detonate. Safety systems did function. Specifically, Safety System Number 4. What the statement omits is that 3 other safety systems failed. That the weapon armed itself. That detonation was prevented not by robust design, but by a single point of mechanical resistance. Local newspapers run the story on page 3. It's eclipsed by other Cold War news: Kennedy's inauguration, rising tensions in Berlin, the failed Bay of Pigs invasion looming just months ahead. A bomber crash in North Carolina, even one carrying nuclear weapons, barely registers in the public consciousness. The official line holds, no danger, systems worked, move along. The witnesses. But you can't scatter nuclear weapons across 12 square miles of farmland without leaving witnesses. Don Sewell, the tobacco farmer who heard the crash, watches soldiers dig in his field for weeks. They cordon off areas, set up checkpoints. Tell him nothing. Years later, he'll tell reporters, "They dug for days and days, brought in all kinds of equipment. Then, one day, they just stopped, filled in the hole, and left. Never said what they were digging for. Never said what they left behind." Duke Power Company, planning to build a cooling pond for a nuclear reactor nearby in the 1970s, is quietly warned away from the site. The land is purchased by the Air Force under an obscure easement. Officially, it's for environmental monitoring. Local residents develop folklore around the crash site. Some claim their Geiger counters click when they get too close. Others report dead patches in the soil where nothing will grow. Most assume it's exaggeration, local color, conspiracy theory. They don't know they're standing on top of a buried hydrogen bomb. Declassification. For decades, the truth remains locked in classified archives. The weapons specialists who worked the recovery are bound by security clearances. The reports are stamped Secret Restricted Data, the highest classification level, reserved for nuclear weapons information. Then, in 2013, journalist Eric Schlosser, researching his book Command and Control, files Freedom of Information Act requests for documents related to nuclear weapons accidents. The government releases a 1969 report written by weapons safety engineer Parker F. Jones. In it, Jones reviews the Goldsboro Incident and writes, "The Mk-39 Mod 2 bomb did not possess adequate safety for the airborne alert role in the B-52. One simple dynamo technology, low-voltage switch stood between the United States and a major catastrophe." The document is a bombshell. It contradicts 52 years of official denials. It confirms that the weapon was one switch away from detonation. News organizations pick up the story. Headlines scream, "U.S. nearly nuked itself in 1961. How a single switch saved North Carolina. Declassified files reveal America's closest nuclear call." The Air Force issues a statement saying the declassified document does not reflect the whole story, and that multi-layered safety systems prevented detonation, which is true. The multiple layers did prevent it, but only barely, only by the narrowest of margins. The pattern. The Goldsboro Incident, once revealed, forces a reckoning with a larger truth. It wasn't unique. Researchers begin compiling other nuclear close calls. 1958, South Carolina. AB-47 accidentally drops a Mark VI nuclear bomb on a family's property. The conventional explosives detonate, destroying the house, but the nuclear core, carried separately, doesn't arm. 1961, Yuba City, California. A B-52 catches fire during takeoff. The crew jettisons 2 nuclear weapons into a river to prevent them from exploding in the crash. The weapons are never recovered. 1966, Palomares, Spain. AB-52 collides with a tanker during refueling. 4 hydrogen bombs fall from the wreckage. 2 land intact. 1 sinks into the Mediterranean, recovered after months of searching. 1's conventional explosives detonate, scattering plutonium across farmland. 1968, Thule, Greenland. A B-52 crashes into sea ice, igniting its fuel and detonating the conventional explosives in all 4 nuclear bombs on board. Plutonium contaminates the ice and water. One bomb's core is never found. The Pentagon's official count: 32 broken arrow incidents, accidents involving nuclear weapons between 1950 and 1980. Independent researchers believe the real number is higher, much higher. Each incident is a reminder that the Cold War's promise of safety through deterrence rested on a foundation of luck. Human aftermath. Lieutenant Mattox, the navigator who survived the bailout despite a fractured spine, recovers physically, but the psychological weight never lifts. In interviews decades later, his voice still trembles when describing the breakup of the plane. "You don't forget something like that," he says. The sound of the aircraft tearing apart, the feeling of falling through darkness, and then finding out later what we were carrying, how close it came. You wake up at night sometimes and think, I should be dead. We all should be dead. The families of the 3 crew members who died, Major Reynolds, Sergeant Shelton, and Sergeant Grisham, are given the usual military honors: flags, condolences, medals. They're never told how close their loved ones came to being the epicenter of a nuclear holocaust. Because what would you say? How would you explain that their deaths were part of a system so fragile, so dependent on luck, that a jammed switch was all that stood between survival and annihilation? You wouldn't. You couldn't. So you bury the truth along with the dead. The jammed switch. Return, for a moment, to that single mechanical component. A low-voltage arming switch. A simple piece of Cold War engineering, designed as a last resort safeguard. It's roughly the size of a cigarette lighter. Inside, a spring-loaded contact waits to complete a circuit. When specific conditions are met, when all other safeties have been satisfied, when the weapon's internal computer confirms proper arming sequence, this switch receives a signal to close. In Goldsboro, that signal was sent. The weapon's logic was satisfied. 3 of 4 safeties had failed. The bomb was ready. But the switch didn't close. Why? Investigators never determined the exact cause. Perhaps metal fatigue? Perhaps the impact angle stressed the mechanism? Perhaps moisture from the swamp seeped into the housing? Perhaps, in the violent tumbling of the aircraft, the switch mechanism bent just slightly out of alignment. Perhaps. The point is, we don't know. And the not knowing is the lesson. Because if we knew, if we could point to a specific design feature, a specific quality control procedure, a specific protocol that prevented the detonation, then we could claim the system worked. We could say human ingenuity and careful engineering saved the day. But that's not what happened. What happened was chance, accident, a random confluence of forces that happened to break in the right direction instead of the wrong one. The world didn't end not because we were competent. The world didn't end because we were lucky. The mirror of technology. Nuclear weapons are, in a sense, perfect mirrors. They reflect back at us the truth of our limitations. We build systems, we layer safeguards, we write protocols and train personnel and test components. We construct elaborate frameworks of control designed to master forces that exist at the edge of physics, that channel the same power that lights stars. And then we put those systems in airplanes. We fly them through thunderstorms. We keep them aloft for hours at a time, day after day, year after year. We stress them. We fatigue them. We defer maintenance because the mission tempo doesn't allow downtime. And we're surprised when they fail. The Goldsboro Incident reveals the fundamental paradox of nuclear deterrence. The weapons that are supposed to make us safe only work if they're ready to use. But being ready to use means they're dangerous, and the danger increases with every hour they're deployed. You cannot have fail-safe nuclear deterrence. The two concepts are contradictory. Safety requires the weapons be locked away, inert, impossible to trigger accidentally. Deterrence requires they be ready to launch immediately. These requirements cannot be simultaneously satisfied. So we split the difference. We accept risk. We build in safeguards, yes, but we accept that those safeguards might fail. We accept that luck is part of the equation. The question is, how much luck? And for how long? Then and now. The year 1961 is 64 years in the past. The Cold War ended more than 3 decades ago. The B-52 bomber that broke apart over Goldsboro would be considered ancient technology by contemporary standards. Surely we've learned. Surely the systems are better now. And yes, in some ways they are. Modern nuclear weapons have more sophisticated safety mechanisms. Electronic permissive action links prevent unauthorized detonation. Command and control systems are more secure. But the essential fragility remains. Today, there are approximately 12,500 nuclear warheads in global arsenals. About 3,700 are actively deployed. Hundreds are on ballistic missile submarines patrolling the oceans. Hundreds more in missile silos on hair-trigger alert. The weapons have changed. The delivery systems have changed. But the fundamental equation hasn't. High-energy systems plus human operators plus long deployment times equals accumulated risk. And we've added new variables. Cyber vulnerabilities, AI-assisted command and control, aging infrastructure, rising geopolitical tensions. In 1961, the jammed switch was mechanical. In 2025, it might be software, a line of code, a sensor reading misinterpreted by an algorithm. The form changes. The fragility doesn't. The tomb. Beneath a field in North Carolina, 20 feet underground, surrounded by waterlogged clay and mud, a Mark 39 hydrogen bomb still rests. The Air Force removed what it could: the tail assembly, the secondary components, most of the arming mechanisms, but the primary warhead remains. Several pounds of plutonium-239 wrapped in explosive lenses, encased in a titanium housing. It's not dangerous exactly. The conventional explosives have been deactivated. The triggering mechanisms removed. Even if you could reach it, even if you dug it up, it wouldn't explode. But plutonium-239 has a half-life of 24,000 years. The atoms will keep decaying, emitting radiation, long after our civilization has ended. Long after English is a dead language. Long after the United States is a historical footnote studied by peoples we cannot imagine. The site is monitored. The Air Force maintains easement rights. Occasionally, sensors check the radiation levels in the groundwater. But for the most part, the bomb is simply there, forgotten by most, ignored by policymakers focused on contemporary threats. It's a tomb, a memorial, not to the 3 crew members who died. They have graves elsewhere, with names and dates and flags. No, this is a memorial to what didn't happen, to the millions who didn't die, to the cities that weren't vaporized, to the civilization that continued, unaware of how close it came to ending. Final reflection. On January 24, 1961, at approximately 2 a.m., the fate of millions of people hung on a single jammed switch. The people sleeping in Goldsboro didn't know. The families in Raleigh, in Washington, in New York, none of them knew. They woke up the next morning, made breakfast, went to work, worried about ordinary things, bills and relationships and the minutiae of daily life. They never knew that their existence was contingent, that they were alive not because of any particular virtue or protection, but because of chance. This is the hidden arithmetic of the nuclear age. How many times has the world not ended? How many close calls are buried in classified files? How many jammed switches, lucky coincidences, and last-second decisions have we accumulated in the decades since we split the atom? We don't know. We can't know. The full accounting remains classified, scattered across military archives, hidden behind security clearances and official denials. But we know about Goldsboro. We know about the jammed switch. We know that once, at least, the world continued, not because we planned it that way, because we were lucky. The question that haunts anyone who studies these incidents, who reads the declassified reports, who talks to the survivors, is this: how long can luck last? Somewhere beneath a North Carolina field, a weapon still sleeps. Its plutonium core sealed in mud and silence, emitting radiation that no human will ever feel, decaying with a patience that makes human lifespans seem like single heartbeats. It rests there as a reminder. The world didn't end, not because we were careful, but because we were lucky. And luck, by definition, runs out. The sound of a Geiger counter fades slowly to silence.